For the first time in KLR history, we are with a living, breathing guest. The pride of... Liz, you say
Boston,
the pride of Boston. Liz Summers. Liz, I've had so many fake interviews, like I told you, over the years. How does it feel to be the first real person on the podcast?
I mean, I'm certainly honored. A little scared. We'll work through all the emotions over the next little bit, I'm sure.
Please. I feel like I gotta ask everybody, have you been quarantining well? Are you out there flaunting life and limb for human interaction?
Definitely in Cincinnati, have stayed kind of close to the homeland, only venturing out for the necessities. But I did go home for almost a month. I was back up in the Boston area, but pretty much hung out with family. And Massachusetts was kind of one of the worst hit states early on, and they're recovering very well. So I wasn't as scared, but I spent about a week on the Cape, a week at home, a week on the South Shore with one of my best friends who was up from DC, and then drove back. I did not fly, did not want to risk that at all. And then drove down to Philly to visit one of my best friends, and then drove back.
Well, right before I pressed record, you sneezed several times. You let out a long smoker's cough, several other things.
And said, I can't taste my drink at all. It needs to be stronger. Yes.
You held up a Glade plug into your face, said, I can't smell a thing.
Yep.
I'm not ready to die.
That was one of the things. Like, being in the testing protocol helped. So I was pretty aware. And from after that, kind of staying at home. And so I'm back in Cincy.
Just two healthy people.
Hopefully. Knock on some wood. There you go.
Like I've always known, Boston through and through. Never had a doubt. Always knew you're a Boston. From what little I've been able to gather from your small amount of public information on your Facebook page, you went to Boston College.
I did. I'm a double eagle. Proud double eagle.
I don't know what that means.
That means you have 2 degrees from Boston College.
Hey.
My undergraduate and my MBA.
What was the undergraduate in?
Economics. And that went through about midway through my junior year until I realized economics had far more math than I ever thought. Math and I don't really get along. So I switched to communications and boosted my GPA significantly in my last 3 semesters and graduated with a double degree.
We already have so much in common. I got a 60% on my math GED test after I dropped out of high school. So I feel like MBA business, we got that going on. And then right out of college, you're doing PR communication stuff, or was there anything before that?
No, it was in college and then right after. It was at BC. I stayed at BC for a couple of years, worked with them. Actually, Cincinnati should be well aware, with Miami of Ohio being so close. BC's a big, obviously, at the time, Big East football, Big East basketball, but also very good hockey team, college hockey. And I worked with them for a couple of years and then kind of went off, different part of the country, came back, and that's when I got into soccer. Needed a small break, went back to BC, kind of back to the motherland, homeland, and then got recruited out here to Cincinnati and fell in love with this charming city.
You just zipped right past.
Sorry. I'm giving you opportunities to dive into more areas. In PR, we tell people to tell your story. Tell the story you want to tell.
And I don't really have a bunch of Boston College questions per se. I'm trying to make it a lot of my life there. A nice time. Yeah, exactly. I do have a Boston College question before we get off. I wrote this because this was too important. There's a Boston College alumni party. The ballroom catches on fire. It's in a ballroom. Matt Ryan, Doug Flutie, and Luke Kuechly are inside. You can only save one. Liz, who are you carrying out? You have some reason of special ability, but you can carry one.
Is Brian Giunta also at this party?
Is that a person?
He's a hockey player.
You'd think I would know a college. I guess I could have researched something, but these are just the Boston College players.
I mean, if you give me only those 3, the only one of that 3 I haven't met or worked with is Luke. But I have never, I've never heard a negative comment about Luke in my life. And Matt has always been a gentleman, and I've never heard a bad thing about him. I've worked with Doug.
He started doing Notre Dame games. What's up with that?
He did, but I do think that this is a Cincinnati-based audience, so I probably have to save Luke.
That's fair.
I haven't met him, though, so that could be, that's just based off reputation.
But soccer, did you like soccer before you worked in soccer, or were you forced into loving it?
No, I actually hated soccer. I was the typical, middle American who hated soccer. Didn't understand it, no score. Why would you watch that game? I loved hockey. I've loved hockey my whole life. loved basketball for a stint, loved baseball for a stint, have always loved football. But why would you love soccer? And then at BC, when I first worked there, I had to work with them on the men's team. And within about 3 weeks, between the personalities and just watching the game and just constant action and no breaks, I fell in love with the sport. So it worked with men's soccer. When I worked at Texas, they didn't have men's soccer. I still don't understand that. So I worked with the women. And then one of my best friends from good old BC asked me if I knew anyone who'd want to be a Revolution comms manager or comms coordinator at the time. And I was getting ready to leave Austin and said, well, you know what? I think I know someone. And that happened to be me.
Look at that. You just weaved your story so perfectly.
I came back.
So seamlessly. I did ask you about that St. Louis logo earlier, but the real roundabout way for that is, did you, as somebody, a semi-important position within the Revolution, ever say, you could get an ear of somebody, should we change the Crayon flag logo, or have you grown to love it?
I mean, I've grown to love it just because that was such a significant portion of my life, and it just it was. But I don't know if this is, I think it's public knowledge. The thought process was always rebranding and having a new logo once the new stadium came along. And if you know anything about land acquisition in the New England area, specifically in the Boston area,
of course I do.
There is not much land available. It is very densely built. So I give a ton of credit to Mr. Kraft and Jonathan Kraft trying to find enough space in Boston to fit a soccer-specific stadium, because the passion up there for the sport is incredible. They're brilliant men. They're brilliant sports business practitioners. So they're going to do the right thing, put the stadium in the right spot once there is enough land available for them to build it, because that is a definitive problem. I don't think you have many New England fans listening to this podcast, but
how dare you?
Definitely.
There could be 10 more years with that grand logo at that rate. Once you've given yourself the out of, well, when there's a new stadium, you can just keep kicking that can down the road.
But my understanding, at least when I left the organization, was that the rebrand would come with the new stadium.
So following your story arc, you leave New England. Was it weird coming from New England, who's been in MLS since the beginning, to this team that's completely new-ish, and everybody's super amped because it's a brand new thing, like a new toy in Cincinnati? What was it? Was it like a weird transition going from, I don't know much about New England, but it seemed like at least a steady line, without saying anything bad, not as much ebb and flow, while FCC, for as bad as the first season went, everyone, it was on
I'm not going to admit it was the draw. That was the draw to come here. After I left New England, my job got stale. And it was tied to the stadium. My job wasn't going to change until we got the new stadium. And I had to do almost all the traveling. And for anyone that's worked for their job, especially to be on the road, the equivalent of 3 to 4 months a year, it's tough. And I just needed a break. And kind of simultaneously to that, I got a call from my old boss at BC that said, hey, we're looking to make some changes here. Are you interested in coming back? It kind of all lined up. But then kind of got frustrated, missed soccer, missed kind of the uniqueness that MLS is. Reached out to a bunch of folks, including New England, US Soccer, MLS. There were a few opportunities, but none were just the right opportunity for me. And then all of a sudden in mid-January, I literally heard the name of Cincinnati 3 times in 2 days. And I was like, what the hell is going on? And this, I'm in the middle of hockey season. It's super busy, not paying attention to what's happening in MLS. And I was like, what is going on in Cincinnati? So randomly, having heard this in 2 days, I texted Twellman and was like, dude, what is going on out there? And I'd heard about the Open Cup game, and I may have even watched it. I can't remember. But he's just like, no, they're getting an MLS team. And this was January of 18. And I was like, no way. He's like, no, legit, they're getting an MLS team. Why? And I was like, well, people have come up to me about a job there. And he's like, you have to do it. It's going to be incredible. It's not going to be what you're used to. It's going to be what you've wanted. Hold on. Let me text Jeff Birding, the president. Give me 10 minutes. Text me back. Jeff Birding's expecting your phone call. Call him. Send me your resume. Left a message for Jeff. He called me back that night. We set up a time to talk a few days later. The 20-minute phone call turned into 2 hours. I didn't really want anyone to know that I was thinking of leaving BC. So I think I was sitting in a car in a school parking lot in my hometown. He was at a coffee shop. said that Lindsay was in the car waiting for him. He was expecting 20 minutes. We literally almost went 2 hours, and he told me the whole business plan for even just the USL. And I was floored and flabbergasted for the ambition of the club. And that was something you want to do. Not that New England had no ambition, because I was certainly aware of what was happening, but you get into a rut where you're the second tenant in your own building. Boston, outside of maybe Philly, maybe Chicago, is one of the biggest sports cities in the country. You lead the news every day with either politics or sports. It's just huge. And the Revolution were kind of cut behind a few other teams, just a few, who'd all won championships in the last few years. So the opportunity and kind of the interest of what was going on here was certainly piquing my interest. We talked some more. He asked me at the end of the conversation what I thought, and I said, this is incredible. This is exactly the situation I'd want to come back to, but it's Cincinnati. Because in my head, Cincinnati was this like dilapidated Rust Belt town. I knew nothing about it. I knew nothing about the Renaissance that was happening, nothing about the growth with the Fortune 500s that were here. And he said, if that's the case, give me a weekend. Come out here. Let me show you around. And I said, sure. We worked it out. I came out for about 36 hours. It was about 30 degrees and snowing, but he drove me around and told me enough of the story. And I met with enough people that I got it. I understood why Cincinnati was getting a club. Signed on, had a little bit of a delay just because some of the teams I was working with got here in May. And literally the second day, my phone call was to the league office saying, let's plan this expansion announcement. So
you'd already flipped it on Jeff. He was already instantly recruiting you, not the other way around. You gave him his resume, but it sounds like you were the one being courted.
I mean, I think it was a little of both. I think the league knew I wanted to come back into the sport. U.S. Soccer knew I wanted to come back into a sport. The Revs knew. There were a few opportunities, but the fact, having spent so much time in the league and knowing ownership groups and knowing ambition of clubs and knowing what cities I wanted to live in, or what type of situation I wanted to live in, made a big difference. I could be a little choosy. It was really the visit out here that sold me, and to see what Cincinnati is. I joke that Cincinnati is everything you love about the Northeast without everything you hate about the Northeast. The weather, the traffic, the people, the cost of living. I've really fallen in love with the city. So it made a lot of sense.
We're not perfect, Liz. Okay. As much as
no one is, but it's even my mother, who is dyed in the wool Bostonian, born and raised her entire life. She comes out and visit me. She's looking for positions out here too. You come out here, you spend some time, you fall in love. So I certainly have. Could
you name one thing that you actually knew about Cincinnati before? Because I mean, I've been here my whole life, so I can't really see from anywhere else.
I will say this. One of my roommates when I worked at Texas is from Cincinnati and worked at Kentucky. I had a 3-bedroom house and he just moved in because I had extra bedrooms. And I remember one day he made Cincinnati style chili, and he made the spaghetti, and he made from scratch the chili and put so much cheese on this one bowl that I looked at him and went, what the hell are you doing and about to eat? He's like, no, it's a Cincinnati thing. And I was like, oh, good for you. That is disgusting. So that is probably all I knew about Cincinnati.
You didn't try it that moment?
No, no,
That's fair.
Not at all. So that's pretty much all I knew. I honestly, I think it was Jeff's conversation and then the visit out here. You know, I've grown up on beaches and by water my whole life, and to have the river here, in terms of swimming or boating or anything else.
You cross it. To
have it here, I mean, the city's beautiful. It's a bigger city than I ever thought it would be. You know, my experience in Ohio had been Columbus. So this is much more of a city to me than Columbus happens to be. I'll proudly proclaim Cincinnati from my perch as much as I can.
What are you, central, east, west?
Central-ish, east side.
I know you're not west. I shouldn't even ask. Nobody moves to Cincinnati and moves to the west side, even though there's nice places.
No, I did. When I was doing my research, though, it was like, what is this thing about the east and west? Because in Boston, like, there's various suburbs that you want to, maybe that haven't been built back up again, or kind of had the recovery or the revival that some other neighborhoods have. So I didn't really understand east versus west at all. Jeff and FCC had brought me out for the first 2 games of the 18 season to kind of come. But I needed to get an apartment or a place before then. So I actually got my place on a FaceTime tour.
I don't want to forget this, but we joke a lot about when a new player would come to FCC, the first thing they do is like take them to Skyline and film them. So how do you feel?
You mean like I did with Jurgen Locadia? Yeah.
I mean, everyone's, it's like a rite of passage. It's like walking across the hot coals. After seeing your friend make the concoction that was a normal dish to us, how do you feel now about the forced SKYLINE consumption?
Well, I will give credit.
Like either 1A or 1B on what a new player is like. Have you had SKYLINE?
I mean, you do it. I mean, they're also a club partner, so you do it for multiple reasons. My whole point, and especially Jurgen is probably for me the most recent example. I said, you're going to get asked, do you want to lie or do you want to tell the truth? I don't care how much you eat, but so long as you take one bite, you can say you have tried it. So that's what we did with Jurgen that day. I had to also eat it to ensure that he ate it. So we
was it more than one bite for him, or was it just the solitaire?
No, I'd say he had a couple because he wasn't quite sure what the first one was.
That's fair.
And it was Coney's.
They say it takes 3 times.
Well, I was going to say, Matt Schisler, who I'm sure all FC Cincinnati fans, was on my staff. And I remember DJ Schweitzer was the first one who introduced me to SKYLINE my first year. I wasn't quite sure. I took a bite. I didn't get this whole cinnamon part of it because that was all I tasted at first. And then Matt Schisler was like, SKYLINE is like dating. It takes 3 times. It's like the first time you're like, can't judge it on once. Let's try it the second time. If you can get through the second time, you get to the third time, and then third time you're in love, or whatever the.
No, I get it. You're bathing in SKYLINE after that, pretty much.
I would say I'm on like my 30th, 40th date. I'm still not in love with Cincinnati chili.
It might be time to give up. It's okay. I don't know.
But I will eat it. I will eat it, and I think part of it has to do that. I almost prefer the beans and the chili and the cheese as opposed to kind of the other concoctions. I'll eat a coney, but I can only eat one. So I feel like I'm wasting the experience at that point.
At New England, was there as much of a fan-driven, let's say, podcasts or non-traditional media outlets that you were dealing with? I use dealing with either positively or annoyed by, as when you came to Cincinnati. Was there?
No, I think it's. To be fair, I think it's 2 different scenarios. I coined the term, and the league adopted independent radio or independent media. Was what we called them, or I termed it just because I didn't want to say non-traditional. I didn't want to say non-legit, like independent kind of fit. It's either fans or it's former media members who formed their own establishment. At that point, a lot of the media transitions and downsizing had started. So there were some really phenomenal journalists and media members who were going into non-affiliated outlets. And yes, we had the Boston Globe, we had the Boston Herald, we had the 5 TV stations. 6 TV stations.
Hey.
We did have a decent amount of independent media who were, Revolution specific, soccer specific. I would say that they tried to be super professional, and some were trained and some were not. So a lot of that was kind of an education process of, hey, you want credentials, you want access. The deal is use us as resources. If you have a question, ask the question. We're here for you. It doesn't help anyone to put out inaccurate information or posits on theories or just guessing. Just work with us. You ask questions. I don't really fib very well. I don't hide the truth or hide what I know very well. I think it's kind of one of the best things about me. I tend to tell my superiors. But if I know something and someone asks a question, I'm going to answer it in the best manner in which I can to help them. I do believe in rewarding people who do the legwork, who do the work, who make the connections, who find out information and want to confirm it. I think that that's a really valuable asset. And I've tried to work with all my staffs to kind of reinforce that you want to reward folks who do the work and make the connections to kind of dig up information. Here, I've had to learn a little bit more of the seeding information and working folks to drop it a bit more. In Boston, it's an ultra competitive media market. You have 2 main dailies, you have 6 TV stations, if not more. Cincinnati is not quite there to that extent. So it's a little bit different media relationship. But towards the end, I understood it a lot better, learned to work a lot better. I think in a major top 10 market, you're doing a little bit more duck and cover. And in slightly smaller markets, you're doing a little bit more proactive seeding information and
please take my information. Please put my information out there. Is the most annoying thing when something comes out that you weren't prepared for it to come out, that you were like something that's you're releasing in a week or something, and then all of a sudden you hear it anywhere, somewhere, and
Yes and no, because it depends on what it is. If it's a player announcement, that's fine. It gives you a little bit of a temperature check on how it's going to resonate and maybe how you announce it. When it's things like a coaching announcement and you go to bed thinking that you're announcing it 6 days later and you're going to announce it, and you wake up to news it's leaked in Europe and you have 4 hours to announce it, we all see what happens. It was probably one of the most stressful 6 hours of my life, to wake up to just missed WhatsApp messages and text messages and missed phone calls from your general manager going, we need to get on the phone and announce this, it's leaked. We definitely had a plan. I went to bed the night before. I had Jeff Birding, I had Alex Steck, I had me, all on the same page of what we were doing. That would allow us to bring other departments in to get a rollout much better. And then woke up to a lot of missed calls and WhatsApp messages and emails and phone calls that this is leaked and we have to announce today. We like literally said, "Yop, you're getting off this Zoom call and you're getting on another Zoom call. Here's the info. You need to talk to Alex to record something." We had to edit a video at the last minute. We didn't really have photos at all. Thanks, Getty. And we didn't have a release written. We had the bio part done, but we didn't have quotes. We weren't in much of a rush. We knew there were some government issues that we had to that was going to be the reason we would leak it. And we were going to use Twellman because ironically, he had reached out about asking about something for earlier in the week. And we went into overdrive from 9:45 in the morning until we hit send at 1 p.m. And then, people thought we maybe have used the wrong photo on purpose to get better impressions.
4D chess you guys are playing. What's the incentive if it's leaked somewhere else? Like, what's the thought process that, all right, we need to, have you missed a window if you don't?
I mean, I think it's
right
different
away, or can you not?
It's different mindsets, and it's all what your target is. Like, there was a very big thought on this that it could not leak, that we wanted to be the one to make the news. So that was the impetus behind this. I've been around in this business long enough to understand leaks happen. They almost always start through agents. They almost always start in Europe when there's a European target or an Asian target or an African target involved. That's how the world works there. You have to be prepared for it. It is going to leak. You have to ignore that and then continue on with your plan. Like I said, it can kind of be a temperature check for you to see how it's going to resonate or how you might need to make your rollout happen to the level that you want to. I don't mind leaks per se. I get frustrated with leaks when I'm hearing through social media or something else that it's something I don't already know. And that then I have to go to other people and say, is this legit or is it not? Because it just kind of puts you on the defensive. You're getting all of a sudden media calls of like, hey, do you have a comment on this? And it's something I'm hearing for the first time through a leak on social media. But if I know about it, I can handle it. And I don't really care if there's a leak or not. It almost gives credence to it, kind of backs it up a little bit more, makes it more important that there is value to the leak that has happened. We used to joke in New England that if it was a quote unquote league source, that was probably me leaking it to someone for a reason. Here, there are times we've leaked and it's either been someone on staff, whether it's, an executive level or a technical level, or whether it's me or someone on my staff kind of getting it out there, or either, like I've said, temperature check, trying to get ahead of something, trying to extend the life of a news cycle, trying to give fans good news that we may take a little bit longer to formally be able to get out. Because just since a guy has signed a contract, that doesn't mean we can announce it. So sometimes you just want the news out before you can actually put it out. But agents do a really, really good job of leaking information, so you try and stay on top of it with them. In the
you ever leak to show that like, hey, look, we're trying to do X, Y, and Z. Like, oh, FCC's talking to so-and-so and so-and-so. And the fans are like, oh, look, FCC sounds like they're trying.
Yeah, I will only do that if there's fire where there's smoke. Like, if it's just a conversation, it doesn't help anybody. You don't want to get people worked up over something that may not happen.
Yeah.
But if we were in a stage where it was going to happen and it was just trying to work out final details, or we were waiting on, X piece of paperwork, absolutely. Yeah. So like in this vein, I'm actually intrigued of all the rumors that are out there now that the transfer window is opening, because I'm not purposefully talking to anyone to find out what's happening. And I'm like,
spoilers. You want to see how
no spoilers, no spoilers. But I'm intrigued as to what they're going to happen. I've seen how Gerard works. I've seen how Hunter Freeman works. I'm as much of a fan as anyone right now.
Well, you were there for Gaston and and Locadia, and both of those things were like roller coasters. And we're like, oh, Locadia is definitely coming. And someone's like, actually, this paperwork's not. We don't know what the hell's going on. But then we hear little things from people.
Gaston was the one where there was a lot going on in the background, and I think had certain people, to my understanding at least, if certain people were not involved in that deal, not on the club level, on either club level, that deal would have happened. We started, even to the point of kind of brainstorming how we were going to announce that. Was he going to be, I think we were in Tucson at that point. Was he going to get to Tucson? We thought that we had tentative timelines of agreements in place and how everything was going to happen. And then it just fell apart. The Locadia one, I remember we were in Tucson. Gerard was in Holland, and we were driving to training one day, and I don't know if we saw a rumor on Twitter. I think we actually saw his son tweet something, and he happened to call me.
Little Nige, we call him.
Yeah, I think we saw him tweet something, and we were in the car, and it was about a half-hour drive from the resort to the training facility. And we were driving down, and either Gerard called me or I called him, but I think he called me. And literally, as we're ending the conversation, I said, hey, or no, I think he may have said, we have a deal coming. And he gave me generalities that were specific enough that Kevin Noonan was in the back seat, kind of looking at the roster as what he was talking about. And literally we hung up the phone, and he's like, well, it's either this dude or this dude, but I'm pretty sure it's this dude. Because Gerard didn't give us the name. He was still trying to make things happen. It wasn't to the point that it was even like, be prepared to do work yet. It was, we may have a signing coming. And we knew Seam was kind of in the background as well. So Jurgen was kind of a little bit of a surprise. And then we got super excited in the car and brainstormed all during training of how to announce him. We got everything done and we got him announced. We did a whole bunch of stuff. So we signed, we were able to manage to do his press conference. I was back home to do it.
Don't forget about Jurgen's Locadia intro. And there's another, Lizz. I don't even know if you'd say conspiracy, because the audio's there. Everyone hears you, Liz. Have you seen, as you guys are going up the escalator, you hear a voice. Some say it's Liz saying, "Oh God."
Probably.
do you recall that? Was that you on the recording saying, "Oh God"?
I mean, it probably was. That was
like, "Oh, Liz is trying to take a dump over this thing."
No. That would have been in my lexicon. His arrival was a cluster because there's basically two flights from Amsterdam. I think there's one to Detroit and there's one to Minneapolis. So anytime anyone was coming from Amsterdam, and we have a ton of people, whether it's players or administrators, coming over from the Netherlands, it's one of those two flights, and we're all aware of them. Matt Schisler and I were on our way there to document it. We had to work with CVG. There were DMs going on. There were emails going back and forth of, do we want to welcome him as fans? Do we not? We were all in favor of him being welcomed, but we had to let CVG know. And it was Sunday, and something had happened over the weekend that had taken a whole bunch of their staff's extra hours. So they didn't have extra staff to help us staff Jurgen's arrival, and they had no bodies for us. So we were super concerned about having potentially a couple hundred people at the airport, with the airport not being able to handle it. So we were dealing with this all morning, and I want to say it was a Sunday.
It feels right.
That we were which is like just one of the worst possible days to have to deal with this. And finally, we got permission. I'm going to the Delta gate. We rushed through, and then we literally, for all of those who are familiar with CVG, it's the second terminal. I was a baggage
handler at CVG, so yes.
So we were running from security to Terminal B. Shiz can run. I do not run.
You're power walking your way.
I will power walk super quickly. I do not run. I had to run, I think it's like a third of a mile.
Did Jurgen know? When did he know that people were going to?
Gerard was on his flight. We texted Gerard because this was all in motion, and I'm WhatsApping him saying, we are going to be at the gate. Let Jurgen know. Like, I hadn't really talked to Jurgen yet. Well, the damn flight was early, and we're on the people mover, and I see Jurgen cross like 30 feet in front of me, and I had to yell from the people mover, like, Jurgen, and he stopped, looked, like, thankfully Shiz and I both wore FCC gear. He kind of like stopped and had to be like, famous. He had to be like, give me a moment. He ran into the restroom, came out, we met him there, told him what was happening. Like, that's our first impression of our DP signing. And then Gerard kind of came off and he just started laughing and chuckling at the whole thing. And we all walked together and we told him, hey, we don't know how many, but we're pretty sure there's a bunch of fans here. Again, because we were in ticketing, we weren't at the baggage level and we had to completely bypass it. So we had no idea who was there. And I was only trading messages with some supporter group leaders. And so I tried to be the first one up the stairs. And when I saw just how many folks were there, that if it was caught on camera, that was my response of, oh God, there's a lot of people here. And
the
you're
glass half
pretty
empty
shy.
Was, Liz hates the fans.
No. That was not it at all. It was, there's a lot of people here. He's not quite prepared for this. He's been on
he did look
a flight
like
for 12 hours.
A deer in the headlights a little bit.
And we could only prepare him so much at that point to be like, hey, this is Cincinnati. Like, there's a couple hundred people here waiting for you to meet you. And he was super tired. Like, you've got to remember, he landed, I want to say around 5:30, 6 o'clock, something like late afternoon. He was tired. He just wanted his bag. He wanted to get to bed. And it was like, I think my impression of, oh God, was there was a ton of media there and there were amazing fans there. It was more just like, I've got to make sure he does this right. And he says, like, he thanks the fans. And I could just tell from, the quarter mile, half mile if he was tired. But he was a rock star. He did it. We grabbed his bags. He did the media interviews. Jeff Birding, like, literally pulled up at the last second because, as again, the flight was early. It all worked out in the end, but, Cincinnati fans do a hell of a job. That's not something that's happening in a lot of markets. I will say that. That's part of the reason that when I had that conversation with Jeff back in January of 2018, that made this place special.
There's a moment he got off the escalator and like waves to everybody and then like went to get his bag. And I'm like watching a live stream. I was like, oh God, is he going to come back? I didn't know if he was going to come back. And I was just imagining him like just waving, getting his bag and like disappearing. And I'm like, oh, that would have been hilarious.
I would not have let that one happen. Like that was one where it was, he was going to have to talk to the fans and he was good about it. Like once he understood what was happening.
Yeah. I mean, you could tell he was kind of like,
I think it was one of those, you can only so many times explain to someone, this is what you should expect. And he got it. And to be fair, he's had nothing but great things to say about the city since.
He's had 2 bites of SKYLINE. He
has had 2 bites of SKYLINE. We have photo evidence of that. And I have witnessed it. I will say this, he did not understand why the cheese was orange.
Like I said, we're still live streaming across the YouTube right now with Liz Summers. No, I'm just kidding. That would be cruel, wouldn't it?
Well, it would have been a blatant lie, and you would have been completely knocked off media lists at that point. But I don't have control of those anymore, so we're good.
I have zero access to anything. You know that, Liz. Don't lie. I have no information. All right, summon yourself, because when you're done with your phone, I got to ask you about the most famous tweet you've ever sent in your life. So unless you're sending something more outrageous.
Because I would love the opportunity to explain this tweet.
We didn't know a lot about you, Liz. You come in out of nowhere from doing.
To be fair, I'm a pretty private person. I only kind of go out in public when I need to, or kind of get in front of cameras or microphones when I have to. It's not one of my favorite things to do. So I was not expecting the backlash to this tweet that I got.
In your defense, I was like, there could be more gold to unearth in this Twitter timeline. I go back through it. There was nothing else good. I mean, not in a bad way. There was nothing else. You didn't go back
far enough because there was another grocery store related tweet. And you and I traded messages earlier this week, and I was like, God, if I could only remember what year that was, I could pull it up. And then I never went back.
The original one or the most recent one? You're talking about the original?
No. The one you and I are talking about, that there is context that I believe needs to be out there, is certainly the most discussed Cincinnati Liz Summers related tweet to my knowledge. It was a long series. There's a supermarket series. I mean, I like to cook. I'm in the supermarket a lot, and I am observant. But I will say this one.
Hold on, before you explain yourself, we should set the stage. It was the Christmas Eve.
Okay, that was a point, because I knew there was context to this because it was Christmas time. I was in Williamsburg, Virginia with my family. I knew it was in that range. I just couldn't remember when my family descended on Williamsburg, because that was a key crux of it. And
it's in my screenshots, so anytime I need to go back to it, I get quick access to it. Do your husbands at the grocery store to This is the part that really hurts. As a husband who does a lot of grocery shopping, help their wives. You're not helping at all. Please step aside. Who hurt you, Liz? Who was in the store that day that really just took the wind out of your sails?
I think the fact that this was December 23rd is key context. December 23rd, you have a lot of families who are getting ready for huge Christmas Eve meals, Christmas Day meals. So correct me if I'm wrong, that might have been a Saturday Christmas.
I don't know that. I can't go that far.
Regardless, my whole family had descended on Williamsburg, and I am normally the holiday cook. So I make a menu and then have to sit there and worry about, is the family going to accept it? Well, they did not accept the menu as soon as they got there, and I had to pivot and plan Christmas Eve meal, which we tend to keep a little bit more low key. So I kind of threw a hissy fit at home and was like,
You're on edge already.
Exactly. Like, you don't understand my family. We had 5 generations at this Christmas. My grandmother is in her mid-90s, still sharp as a tack, still super like acerbic and super sarcastic. Obviously, you could tell where the pine cone falls off the pine tree with me. And I was just over it. And I was like, well, if you don't want what I've planned, then we're going to the supermarket. One of the issues was that we went to the brand new Publix in Williamsburg, not the Harris Teeter. The Harris Teeter, we all know where everything is. You can get in and out. We went to the Publix. There was my 2 uncles, my mother, and I, and the whole goal was to like get in and get out. I go to the produce aisle, and God love the husband that was with this wife. He wanted to help. You wouldn't otherwise be in a supermarket 2 days before Christmas. And he literally was just standing with the cart in front of like the celery, carrot, spinach, kale area, like huge areas for Christmas meals that you need. And just standing there, like scrolling through his phone, not doing anything. And his wife, like, wasn't following his wife around, wasn't getting stuff, was just had the cart, no understanding of the chaos that's happening around him. And it was like, I needed to get to the carrots that were right behind him. And I think at that point, I was so over needing whatever else, and that it was like, dude, just please move. I was standing there for probably 15 seconds, like politely kind of doing the hover stare to wait for him to like feel my presence and go, oh, I'm so sorry. Do you need me to move?
I can picture it now.
There's been times in life where bullets have come, but this was just like, I did the hover, I did the polite hover, I did the like kind of go behind him, go in front of him. So that is where the story comes from.
I like how ingrained it is too. It's like imprinted.
I mean, how many times has this tweet come back to haunt me in the last year and a half?
To bless you, I should say.
I mean, hell, you've even immortalized me in song, which is hysterical.
I'm sorry if I ruined that song. It's a Christmas classic before that.
You did not. I found it utterly hysterical. But that is the story behind it. It was just this one, I'm sure, lovely gentleman who just was so unaware of the chaos around him and so ingrained and engrossed in what was happening in his phone.
Well, it definitely read as like a guy, like I imagine, like holding up vegetables and not knowing which was the right one he's supposed to order. He's like sweating and he's like has this
see, that's the story that goes with the first tweet from several years ago, because I was in my hometown walking through the dairy aisle and the poor husband is on his phone and calls his wife and he's like, babe, where do you find the, and I don't remember exactly what it was. It's in the tweet. We'll say it's like non-fat heavy cream. Just what he tried to say does not exist at all. And I walked by him and heard it, and I was just like, oh, that's not going to end well. But I will say that apparently either Boston College or Revolution fans didn't care as much about the poor folks at a grocery store as much as FC Cincinnati fans do. So I will give them credit.
We had a narrative, Liz, so it all just... I'm glad you told your own story, but we had written the story of Liz, and it went with that tweet, so... I
mean, I've told people there's a public perception of me, and then once you get to know me, I'm an entirely different person, so...
You already said this wasn't true, but I had heard that it was overheard. Maybe it was somebody just, pulling the wool over my eyes. They said, oh yeah, Liz, she said she loathes KLR. And I was like, fantastic. I don't know why.
I think as I told you, I have a pretty vast vocabulary of adjectives or verbs. Loathe, when you kind of messaged me that, I was like, that's not really one of them. That's not one I would use. So I'm pretty sure I didn't say that. I will say when I first started here, I did not understand your sense of humor at all. I was like, what the hell is this? And it was kind of the indoctrination of what the Cincinnati fan is and how invested and how passionate and how avid of fandom there is. To the point that Matt Schizzler or Charlie Hatch or Kevin Noonan would sit there and be like, oh, Knifey Lion Radio just posted something, and it would become a group like, oh, what is this? Like, let's take a look. Let's watch this as a group viewing. So if you didn't get as many views as you would have hoped, that could be part of us just doing a group viewing and not.
It's the quality of views, not the quantity.
Well, we go straight through. You got full viewing from us.
Well, I don't know if it's a coincidence, but my season ticketing rep changed this year, so I don't know if someone's like, "Get me off, Jonah. I don't want to associate with them. I got a new ticketing rep. I don't know. I don't want to start a conspiracy, but I don't think they want to be our rep anymore." How do you know
it wasn't like trying to help you get someone potentially better?
I won't say, I can't reveal who was who or who was what, but sure, I'm all fine for the switch, but I took it personally.
I think it was maybe trying to just give more personalized service. How about that?
Sure. I'm an easy customer. I don't do anything. I just have my tickets and I go to the games. Not difficult at all.
But no, like I think especially when Mary LIZZMAS came out, everyone was like, oh, Liz must hate them. But you can ask my entire staff. I died laughing and actually was like half honored that I got immortalized in something. Of course, it was the very tweet that was completely out of context. But I thought it was hysterical.
Did you see me burn the FCC jersey? That was one of my most popular / least popular videos. I impersonated a Crew fan and I burned a jersey on.
Okay, so the
that was a 6-month long con.
I will say this. In terms of your brand of humor and satire, the biggest issues that you caused me were people who didn't understand you and who took what you did seriously and thought it was issues that were newsworthy. And it was like, no.
I was so upset that didn't get more traction. This dumb video of burning that jersey.
Oh, no, it definitely did in Columbus. And at the league level, they reached out and were what was going on. And I, had to kind of backtrack and walk it backwards and explain, no, this is a satire site. It's meant for humor. It's a lot of inside jokes. It's not a fan actually burning the jersey. Please understand this.
Well, that could have been good promo. Like this rivalry is taking on new meaning. Fans are losing their minds. Oh, that's fantastic.
And then the other thing was when old parody that you would do would get recycled to common times. As if it was current and new and people didn't understand that it was parody and satire and not actual commentary. Those were the two issues that never with you, Jonah, but with your work that caused the gray hairs to come out.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, that's great to hear, actually.
Yes.
Well, I
think everyone thought that you and I were like butting heads, where I think the first time we traded messages was like late April, early May or something, and I thanked you for something.
Yeah, because you were so mad at me until then.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Couldn't bear the thought of communicating. Plus, I like to keep
You were honestly at times like the light in the day of what was going on. Like, oh, Knifey Lion Radio posted something. Oh, let's stop what we're doing and go take a look.
People have started reposting that club seating video because they're running out of club seats. And I was like, yeah, folks, I don't want to be the Pied Piper of club seating of anger. So, but
no, we already went through that once this spring.
I know. That's enough of that.
Yeah. And last fall.
So you said you'd like to stay in the Cincinnati area.
I'm not big on moving, so there's also that whole thing.
No, I mean, that's the worst thing in the world, but it sounds like something you're semi-familiar with. You've been back, forth, into the middle, and back before, so.
I have, yeah. I don't like packing. In fact, when I moved here, there were still boxes from Austin that literally got shipped as was from Austin.
Are you trying to stay sports related or not necessarily? You don't?
I think I'm most comfortable in sports, and I think there's a few opportunities out there that are potentials. League expansion. The league's had a conversation with me about expansion opportunities. The delay that came out a few weeks ago kind of adjusts that a little bit. But I also think I will give a lot of credit to Jeff and Carl and Dennis Carroll for the fact that most of my job at the end in FC Cincinnati, and when I call the end, it was probably the last 18 months, which flew by, has been mostly kind of corporate and internal communications as opposed to team communications. The running joke was I have literally no idea half the jersey numbers on our team. Like I'm so far removed from all of that and I was doing stadium stuff and community things and marketing opportunities and ticket stuff. And
you're going to be the expansion whisperer now. You could be. There's going to be enough teams for the next 6 years. You could just go.
I worked with an expansion NHL team too, so it's like I really do have a lot of expansion experience, and I enjoy it. And the funny thing is, like, I feel like there could be a potential that if Siri doesn't understand either. So that if I were to go to corporate communications, in corporate worlds and non-sports, I may get bored, and I have no attention span to start with. So I think sports is where I'd probably prefer to stay, but thankfully FC Cincinnati has given me so many incredible opportunities that I've got a skill set and a background of experience that could translate well to normal industries.
You're so positive.
I try to be. See, everyone thinks I'm an absolute nightmare.
I've got a lot of cohorts, people that you've probably talked to, friends of mine. We want to be like a plastic consulting group for soccer teams that are starting. It sounds like you've got all the connections, Liz. You could be the light that guides us, and we could help set up the fan culture in these new cities and then get paid some absorbent amount of money for we already have the knowledge built in. We've got every aspect covered.
I mean, I feel like when I was in New England and Seattle and Portland came in, they were just like, Seattle invented soccer and Portland invented fandom to combat Seattle. It was kind of the running joke of Seattle fans are the first ever fans and they're the greatest fans ever.
Sure.
I feel like it's backed off a little bit from them, and it's kind of, now that they've been around for more than a decade, kind of normalized a bit. But I will say Cincinnati fans are certainly something very special. And I think a lot of the Cincinnati fandoms, at least that I can kind of figure out with the passion in the city and kind of what makes Cincinnati so special, it comes with the lack of success from a lot of the sports teams. And this eternal optimism that every year is a new year and that the good things are ahead. And that's really unique to Cincinnati.
I'm not hearing dollar signs in this, but
well, no, because what I'm trying to say is when you come from an East Coast major market where there's a ton of success, that a team finishes second in its division and it maybe is the second seed in the playoffs, and that's a failure. Where Cincinnati fans just want the chance to go to the playoffs and see what can happen. How
long were you here till you felt the anxiety and depression of Cincinnati fans? Are like, oh, there's a little bit of a haze of anxiousness.
Remember, when I got here, it was essentially started May 1 of 2018. So the whole dialogue of the 2018 USL season was that this was a super club being formed. And the results were good, but they weren't great. And I was kind of paying attention during preseason, and I remember some maybe other outlets in the market maybe attacked the results of preseason. And as someone who's worked in sports for so long, you understand that when you bring that many new pieces all together, it takes a bit to get together. Like, all these superstars just don't form this cohesive unit instantly. It takes a bit to understand to know each other. There's off-field things with bonding and understanding each other that happen. Then my first game here, which I think was the third or fourth game of the season, was the Louisville game, maybe, or the Pittsburgh game, but I think Louisville, and they lost. And then I came back 2 weeks later, and it was the Pittsburgh game, which was the tie. And there was a little bit of optimism, but it was still almost kind of like a 500, just above 500 club until a little bit later. And then kind of that early June Red Bulls game kicked it on, and then it just went. So I could see pretty early on that fans kind of lived and died by clubs. It was what happened, and that set the tone for the commentary for what was going on. So that first kind of 2.5, 3 months that I was either about to come onto the club or was transitioning into the club, to kind of see kind of the fan mentality, what was going on. But then from that Red Bulls game, I want to say Manu maybe had the game tying goal or something like that on the road. And then just what happened throughout the summer and the rest of the year and into the playoffs was something special. I knew the fans here were pretty incredible.
Talking about the anxiety and depression, it's all positive spin for you.
It's not anxiety and depression. It's hopefulness.
No, there's a lot of anxiety.
It's hopefulness. It's optimism for what could be.
It's like eternal hope and fatalism at the same time. We managed to hold on to both. We expect the worst, but we're still hoping for.
You hope for the best, expect the worst, and are surprised at the best.
Well, thank you for talking to me. I know you probably agreed to it, and then you were like, Why did I do that?
Well, when I saw the message come through, I think you can sit there and go, I don't know how I feel about this. But you did say you make a promise in DM. It holds in real life.
It's legally binding.
It is legally binding.
That was stressful for me too when you said yes, and I was like, "Oh no, I have to think of things to ask beyond just the tweet. I don't have any."
It's like an onion. I have many layers. You just have to get down to the core center of them.
Always ends in tears, though.
No, that is not true.
You said an onion, so.
Do you wear contacts? Do you wear glasses? There's ways around that.
No, I don't. Well, Liz, it's been an absolute treat.
Oh boy, I feel bad for your listeners.
You should see, I'll send you a screenshot of my Pro Tools after I do an episode, and it's just like hundreds and hundreds of cuts. I'm like, too long a pause? Nope. So I'll chop this up.
Well, the good news is I tend to talk a lot, so there should not be many pauses you have to fix.
Well, if a giant chunk is missing, just know it was important to me, but maybe it wasn't important to all the millions of listeners. No. Well, anything else you need to say to the people now that people know you love them? When you said, "Oh God," it was out of love and shock.
I just want to say, and maybe this is me personally, like I've always been the type of person who has no fear taking the road less traveled. So sometimes you just have to be the person who people don't like. I handle that role very well, I think. I apparently have played it well in Cincinnati, but behind every person like that, there is a soft heart and a normal human being who understands everything.
Hey, I understood that eventually. We've humanized you, okay?
A little bit. You know, for those who aren't paying attention to West End Stadium, like you guys are in for an amazing treat. It is like, there is no picture, no video that can adequately express just how close every seat in that building is going to be to the field. I've been in every single MLS stadium that's open so far, and there is no stadium like it. Inside the stadium, around the stadium, underbellies of the stadium. You know, give credit to Carl Lindner, Jeff Birding, Cody Parsons have taken a huge lead on this project. It is going to be something incredibly special in this market. I can't wait to watch a game there.
You're going to go to a game there? You're going to show yourself?
I hope so. I actually, now as I just said that, I probably should call Jeff Smith and think about some kind of ticket option for next year. I think the next few weeks, the next few months, depending what happens with the MLS season, could be pretty telling and pretty interesting for Cincinnati fans.
Yeah, you said we're signing Mario Götze. That's what you said before we started.
I did not say that. Rumors, leaks. I said I wanted to see how much was happening.
Liz has not said anything about anything. I'm just messing with it.
Nope. I've purposely not asked my former staff about what's going on.
Right, no spoilers. We got that.
Nope.
You want to be?
I do not want to be the leak, but I think there's something really special happening here, and I think Cincinnati fans are justifiably proud.
All right. Well, thanks for the millionth time.
No problem. Anytime.